Director Chambers, she is the director. The hospital is located in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Correct.
And they just start using the robot. And they have very good experience in the assessment, planning, and implementation. Even herself play around the, the robot. I just read about her academic achievement. Her undergrad is, she received a bachelor degree from University of Manitoba, from Canada. And also received an MBA, master degree from University of Calgary. I won't spend too much time on introducing her, and she may introduce her much more, and also their hospital. Okay, I will,
Right.
Director Chamber, your time.
Yes, and you can see my slides, everyone?
Yes.
And you can hear me all right.
Very clear.
Perfect. Thank you. I would love to have been there in the room with you, but I am in the middle of opening a new cancer hospital. So I took up the invitation to share this with you, knowing that I'm in the middle of moving inpatients within 12 hours from now. So I'm going to just share a bit of the road that we've taken to robotics here at the Arthur J.E. Child Comprehensive Cancer Center. And I do not have any conflict of interest to disclose in giving this talk. And what I'm going to try to do is share some background material that we did around automation and robotics on our journey to describe how we put together a compelling case for robotic adoption and recognizing the important considerations when preparing a request for proposal on which to assess robotic offerings, and then identify aseptic processes to be streamlined in the new operating model. So before we went to robotics, and I think you've already mentioned this, there are certain things that really helped us get ready to even consider robotics. So we had adopted many years ago now a next day model where the patient is seen and assessed one day and returns on a different day for treatment. And it allows the physician to assess all the blood work and the patient to give consent. And the patient does not have to sit waiting for then pharmacy to do all the preparation work. And we did publish that in JOP back in 2003. We also adopted dose banding that was put forward by, I believe, the folks in Britain first, and it's been very successful. It allowed us to outsource our drug all the way to Toronto, Ontario, when our capacity started being stretched. We did dose banding. We obviously, to do next day model, have to pre-write orders. We've looked at the pharmacy stability and sterility behaviors depending on your infrastructure that you have under our guidelines that kind of mimic USP, but they are Canadian specific. And I just mentioned we did outsourcing production as the capacity needed to increase. And we do one drug at a time in the hood, which is best practice from ISOP versus some of the pictures about batching multiple different patients and drugs. So the Institute of Safe Medication Practice, which was already mentioned in the intro talk, thank you, is they've got some recommendations for medication safety. And kind of that is always my crux of what are we doing that is enhancing our medication safety. So there are recommendations about computerized physician order entry, electronic prescribing, automated dispensing machines, using barcoding coupled with the electronic medical administration record and the IV infusion technology around smart pumps. So this is actually, I pulled it out of a different slide deck to show that our new building has all of these checked off as well as robotics. And this is a really neat thing that ISMP puts out. And if you're looking at what can I do to have the strongest leverage on medication safety, the bottom of the barrel is suggest to your staff to be more vigilant, be more careful, watch what you're doing, slow down, versus when we get into the high system reliability, you're looking at things like automation and computerization. So you try to push up as much as you can to the most effective and the hardest to implement. Not surprising. So standardization and protocols, redundancies, warnings, alerts, checklists. We were doing a lot in that medium leverage between system reliability and human, but we've managed in a new building to really push up into some of the higher leverage effective ones. And some of our background for this and why I'm sharing it is because this is still my journey, just getting into this. So ISOP put out new standards in 2022, and there was a new chapter in it about automation. And it recognized that robots can be used for hazardous drug compounding, which is great. A lot of technology we cannot go near with hazardous drugs. However, the risk of contamination must be assessed before putting such an operation in place, because the last thing you want to do is now contaminate your environment and your staff. And automation and measurement are valuable tools for increasing your efficiency and safety because they are, again, automation. And the introduction, though, will alter workflow. It definitely will. And to make the best use of that automation, the entire production system should be analyzed and adjusted after implementation. So those were wise words to give us a heads up what we were walking into. And earlier, there was a practice article that came out that did allow the preparation with low levels of environmental contamination and no measurable exposure to the technicians. So that was the whole environmental contaminating. I don't know if you do, but we do a lot of workplace contamination testing. We've done it on a couple of studies. We've published it over the years. And so what we didn't want to find is now we're going to contaminate our environment. So this was a good one to grab. And this is a really good one because I'm still a novice and I figure some people in this audience are not novice. So I figure I'm really taking a risk in front of you because I'm still the novice walking down the robot road. However, my road has been long. I started back in 2007 because I knew automation was where we were going to go. And I took the opportunity when I was in London to go to Charing Cross, who had robots. And they let me spend the day, get gowned up, go meet their robot, and I fell in love with them. And so I've been monitoring robots for well over 15 years. So it wasn't like I just started. But the egg was there. I had an idea, and I do believe ideas have timing and opportunity windows. So that's why I'm here to share. I think I found my window of opportunity. So this is our new hospital. Right now, we've spent a year commissioning the building. We brought in all of our ambulatory patients on Monday. We are bringing in all of our inpatients from around the entire city. Tomorrow, they start coming in. And so one of the things that when you're building a new building that I was given an opportunity is planners tend to ask you when you're doing the functional planning, is there any new technology to be adopted? Because ultimately, a new building, they want to be state of the art. So the Arthur Child, which I'm very fortunate to be part of, is not just robots in pharmacy. It was, automated AGVs is what they're talking about, that basically are robots taking all your supplies around the building. There's new technology in the MRI. We have smart windows that we don't have to have blinds, so we don't have dust, but we have smart windows that adjust based on light. And there's a whole raft of technology in this building. So I was very fortunate to get pharmacy into that technology space. However, in doing that, you can get it accepted in the new building, but you have to then, well, in our governments and for public dollars, we have to do a proper request for proposal, and people get to bid so that we make the best use of the public dollar. And so I do believe I live a charmed life, because when I need to go find something, invariably I find it in the literature. And I was just delighted to find this 2017 article about, an international group that made a bunch of recommendations about robots. So I know I'm not the newest kid on the block, and I definitely had the benefit of this publication. They had 35 recommendations to consider with robotics, and items 7 through 17 were what robotic devices should meet as a minimum, and safety mechanisms that should be included. So I took their advice and I included those 7 to 17 on our request for proposal that went out to vendors. To share a few, like number 7 was the maximum flexibility, allowing both just-in-time and batch in either patient-specific or non-patient-specific production, which gives us the most flexibility in using the robots to their full potential. And number 13 was that recognition of drugs and base solution used in compounding via barcode identification and or optical recognition. So I have written a lot of RFPs in my career, but this article made this one of the easiest ones I've ever been able to do. So this is the Alberta one, just to share. The mandatory requirements on our request for proposal were obviously the first two. You have to meet the Canadian standards, and you've got to have a medical device license under our Health Canada. And then we had already made a decision in Alberta that we were using a specific Epic patient system. And so the proposed system must be able to interface with that. There was already multiple $1 million spent on that system. So whatever we were going to look at had to be able to interface it. We were wanting self-cleaning. We had a footprint from our hospital planners that said, this is what you have to consider. And the only one that was kind of already eliminated with that is Riva, which you already showed a picture of, is very big. And that it has to handle chemotherapy, because we're actually a cancer hospital, and so it has to be able to handle hazardous drugs. So the membership in our RFP process was not only pharmacy. We put our quality assurance lead for IV therapy on it, myself as the director, and we had a frontline technician who manufactures in a hood. We had contracting and legal to make sure we were doing everything correctly that government would accept. We had our information technology people so that we could confirm interfaces. We had infection prevention and control, or IPC, because this was going to be a new technology used for sterile product. So they were very interested. And we also had human factors. That's a group of people that help us assess that our human beings can interact with the system instead of the system dictating to our human beings, so that we wouldn't set up potential errors by just not considering human factors. And so the eggs got hatched. And because of that, I'm going to share with you a quick video. It's 2 minutes, if I can make this work, of the successful vendor from our robot RFP. So just please hold tight for a minute. First step is going to work, and then I'll get it over to you. Everybody can hear that?
As part of the company's commitment to safety, Grifols developed
Good.
Carole Oncology. This automated solution for compounding intravenous treatments for oncology minimizes the risks associated to the preparation of cytotoxic drugs. Carole Oncology receives the prescribed treatments that will be administered to the patient. The necessary drugs and disposals are loaded for the preparation. After identifying the drugs and the materials, Carole Oncology reconstitutes the vials and mixes the drugs using gravimetric controls. It eliminates used materials and vials and keeps partially used vials for subsequent doses. Needle positioning is adjusted using a laser calibration system, all in a completely aseptic environment. At the end of the automatic compounding, the user unloads the preparations and performs a final gravimetric control before labeling them, ensuring full traceability of the compounding process. Finally, Carole Oncology performs a self-cleaning process at the end of each working day for decontamination of hazardous chemicals. Carole Oncology protects the operator from exposure to hazardous drugs, avoids preparation errors, provides an aseptic work environment, and offers increased safety for the patient.
Okay. So we'll go back to the slides. But I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. So thank you, because I've used that video to successfully create a competition for who is going to be my Carole super users to use this robot. And we use it actually in our new building as one of the technologies being profiled. So, okay, so our robots were actually delivered to our new Calgary Cancer Center, which is now our third JE child. And I was not allowed in the building at that point. It was a construction zone. So someone kindly took a picture of my robots. And then they unwrapped them, but this is still not their room. And so I wanted to go through a few, I was asked to talk about, well, what kind of strengths and weaknesses have I found in going through this and this particular choice to this point? And I would say the strength is that you'll notice I have 2 robots, because I was informed by one of the references that we contacted that one technician can, in fact, load and process while the robots are doing their material. With 2 robots, I can use 1 technician. So I actually enhance my productivity right there. I'm not doing a one-on-one. That the strength is it does interface to our patient orders coming across on Epic. That was confirmed before we actually got through the mandatory RFP element, if you remember, and we have successfully got it interfaced, which is great. We have the flexibility to validate different practices. We found that, for instance, we don't necessarily use the same options for overfill, but we are able to validate different practices, which I think is important, because pharmacy invariably has very different practices depending on where you go. And of course, it was self-cleaning, and it really works. So the only weaknesses to this point that I could think of was we use a different cleaner in Canada than what Carole had originally done all their validation. And we had to validate that because we couldn't access it or get it brought in. So we have, in fact, had a third-party validation for the decontamination agent we use in Canada under our regulations. And it's actually been a bonus because it has a need to use less fluid, and there are other installations across North America were asking for it as well. So this has been good for us. We did underestimate our interface timelines. It's working, but when you have a vendor and a very robust IT department with a provincial patient system, they both had I would say testing scenarios that had to be done, and we definitely underestimated the time it was going to take. But we did it. We gave them lots of time and it was all used. And then if I had to do this ever again, I would start from scratch on making the drug library for the robot. One of our references kindly said that they would share their drug library, and supposedly the only thing we were going to have to do is add a column to put the Canadian drug information numbers on all of the drugs we were going to deal with. But we're on version 10 now because we should have started from scratch because we're learning as we go. And both the vendor and my technician and myself have said, okay, if we had to do this again, I think it would have been better to just do it from the start. We would have learned a bit more. So. And then this is my first technician who is receiving training. So my robots are unpacked. They are in their clean room that's been validated. The Carole robot has been validated. And now I have 8 what I call super users that are learning to use that robot. And we have a project planner that is training them all. And they're just now, they've all received their training and they're now just doing their media fill validations on the robot. So we are doing really well. And so we're about to be kicked out of the nest because we're going to start using it as soon as we can possibly do that. And so I've turned my attention to, okay, so when we start using it and it's no longer the new toy, and how are we going to get the most productive use out of it? And right back to the literature I go. So the good thing is I'm not the first in, and there's a couple of good articles that they've only come out in 2022, but this was a multi-center productivity report, and it was from Spain. And so they've given us some ideas around the cycle-specific parameters, such as the number of preparations, number of vials, total volume. And I think it goes back to the first talk about what is the most effective use of your robot. And are you going to get 20% of your stuff out? Then what is the most effective to be using it? And what they found is that their cycles that were lasting 40 minutes or less had a high predictability using their model. And we're going to start, well, first of all, we have to actually get going, and then we're going to pull this out again to see, okay, now how do we apply this learning for us? And then there was another one very quickly, I don't even know if it's in the same volume, but it's in 2022 as well. And this one was Italian, which was great because it tells me there's lots of people out there that are now looking at the productivity, and they managed to get their turnaround times down, which is why I'm interested for productivity, because their medication turnaround time actually decreased by 24%, despite an increase in patients by 16.5, and the IV preparations overall increasing by 17.2%. And as we know, oncology volumes keep going up. And so part of this robot is meant to help insulate us from future pressures such as this. So I'm really interested to see what they have come up with. Not quite ready to go there in depth yet, but I found a couple of articles and there might be more, because I don't think you just do a robot and then hope it just naturally falls. I think you have to stay actively engaged in it to get the most out of the technology that you've gotten. And I left lots of room for questions, so I think I've caught you back up on time. Absolutely no problem, and I'm happy to take any. I could have put more slides, but I figured you'd ask me some questions. If not, I'll ask myself some.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We will end this section at 11:40, so we still have like 18 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Any question in the room? You could speak Mandarin.
He'll translate for me.
Yeah, I will translate for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's one question.
Hi, my name is Travis. I'm working in the chemotherapy compounding pharmacy, and I just curious about if the IV robot, reject the compounding, how do you deal with this bench? Or I think I saw a lot of literature said, some say they were manual to adjust the dosage, but some may be discarded. So how about your hospital's experience? I'm just curious about this. Yes, thank you.
Director Chambers?
So are you talking about what's left in the vial, or are you talking about the accuracy?
I think he is talking about if the drug cannot be compounded by the machine.
Right? Oh.
Right? 你用中文. Yeah, you got it right. Yeah, you are right. Yeah, he's asking the error or mistake. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the robot that I'm using has it has weight in the robot itself, as you saw, the gravimetric, and then it has a secondary weight. So when it is done and it comes out and it has that second weight, if it is outside of a tolerance of 5%, it has to have a secondary review if you're going to accept it or not. If it's more than 10%, it's an automatic rejection by the robot. So there is that flexibility for a secondary review. Are you okay with this or not? And so you spend a lot of time on what is the weights that you're putting near it. And so one of our big discussions had been, are we including our admin lines at the beginning to be part of that weight, because there's a lot of, the robot will deal with weight differences as an accuracy surrogate, I guess. And it also does, have you got the right drug with the optical and barcode reading and all that? That is not, they'll reject it if you've got the wrong drug. But this whole weight thing is very much got some flexibility because we are allowed some flexibility. Okay. Does that help?
Okay, Ma. Okay, he expressed satisfactory about your answer.
I just had to be clear. Well, yeah. Okay, it's good.
Okay. Could I continue the question? Because just now you said
Absolutely.
about the accuracy of the dosing. How about, is it related to the dose bending? So are there two different issues?
There's two different issues. Dose banding in its purest form that I know from the literature is where pharmacy makes an agreement with the prescribers that they will allow some flexibility. And what we do in the EPIC pharmacy or the physician ordering system is behind it. Well, one of my physicians said it's like a pantyhose sizing chart. Like your patient is here, and for all of them, they get this dose band that's plus or minus 5%. That's a dose band. But the number there is the dose that's ordered.
Okay.
So that's very different than what's in the robot. So.
Thank you. Yeah, clear.
Okay.
Clear.
Yeah.
现场有没有其他的问题? Okay, I got a question for you.
Okay.
There are so many brands. Why you pick the brand you are using right now?
I picked the brand I'm using right now. Number one, because it met the mandatory RFP requirements that came through. It was an acceptable risk because they did not have an installation in Canada at that point, but they did have references in the US and Belgium, so they weren't new kid on the block, and they had a working interface to EPIC, which is the system that we're using in Alberta. And so I know that human factors put a lot of work into the questions that were behind those mandatory. And when we all got together as a group, the consensus was that this was the robot to try. And it was in the right time for this building. Now, do I think there might be other ones coming? Well, of course. But at this point in time with this project, this was the best choice for us. And to this point, I have not been disappointed. I'm thrilled to be trying it and getting myself into robotics because I don't think since 2007, I didn't learn a lot that I think I will learn now that we have it. And I will have a whole new network of people because Seattle, which is not far from me, just bought its second Carole robot. So we're going to become the doublet comparers. I'm going to see them in April when ISOP is in Victoria, BC. I'm only a ferry ride away. And we're going to start comparing notes so that I'm on the next phase of productivity, like use those robots to the good thing. I will tell you though, my robot doesn't work at 30 degrees. I had a temperature problem. I had a temperature problem in my new building while they were getting themselves sorted out, and the robot went, I don't work at 30 degrees. Okay, got it. So, yep.
Okay, but just now you said because Carole has the connection between the information system. So other product does not do that? For the information system connection?
No, not to the one that we had spent millions on. No.
Really?
That doesn't mean they couldn't, but they didn't have one built and functional to show us.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So you know, when you make it mandatory, then it's not just a, well, we could. We were in a bit of a, well, not time crunch, but the project had to spend the money or I had to not get robots. So I was pretty motivated.
Great.
So
another question, because you in the literature I just present, the robot mainly perform those simple and batch-wise compounding instead of the patient-specific preparation. Do you agree with that for your toy?
My toy. Well, okay. So my toy is going to insource what we have been having another company do for us in Toronto and fly it to Alberta. And those are the dose banded and they are the simple. But we have also done a whole drug library and figured out how to have that patient order go through the system and how we can divert it into CureLink for my robot to do patient-specific doses. So the second phase of what we're doing is the high volume drugs. So, we've done a whole review of what are our big movers, and those are the ones we're going to put, because I have an inherent belief that the robot is better and more efficient for me if I can say, okay, today, every pembrolizumab that's coming at us is coming at you. I only have to worry about loading pembrolizumab at that machine and whatever it needs, and it is going to be so much more efficient for my technicians to load, and it's going to zippity zip them. So I have no intent of leaving it with just batching and dose banding. That's my first phase, because that's going to save me a ton of money instead of outsourcing it. And I'm bringing it in so that the robots can supply my province with what was coming out of Toronto. So, the robot is not going to be just for that building. It is, because I'm a provincial director, it's going to be for cancer patients throughout the province with the stuff that I had historically outsourced.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
Any questions?
I think big.
From the audience? Yes.
我想用中文比较好，所以我想问2个问题。第一个问题是，那个刚刚理事长讲说，那个 robot 是感染率比较高是？
没有，就是污染。
哦，污染，不是感染率，污染了哈。那
不是，它污染是在那个 compounding 的那个
里头
台面。
哦，所以我想就是延伸到下一个问题，就是说我们用 robot 或者是 manual 哈，在国外比较多，是让病人同意还是我们自己那个实验室来决定？
Okay, the question is asking, in your country or when you're using the robot, do you need to have the patient consent, or the other way is your consideration is because you consider the patient's side, or your decision is making by your department or your staff within your staff. Do I make my question clear?
Yes. So I do not need patient consent for the manner in which I prepare their drugs. And the reason I don't need that is because I am governed by regulatory associations and what I have to meet and what I can demonstrate. So I am not allowed to just do willy-nilly. I have regulations under which I am expected to operate. And have, whether it's a hood or a robot, they have to be certified by a third-party vendor every 6 months. My staff all have to have media test every 6 months. Like, I have to have demonstrated quality for anything that we prepare for patients.
Okay, great.
Okay?
这样有回答你的问题吗? Okay, he is
Okay.
satisfied with your
good.
answer.
Thank you. And I mean, the patients do give consent to any protocol or drug they're going to be given.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, there's a question.
Yep.
OK。好，就是我很好奇，就是像这样子的部分，它需要花多少时间去训练一个药师可以很专业的、顺畅的使用，而且他们中间，因为我们常常在用一些新的，比如说 ADC， 我们去遇到很多要 debug 的事情，那他们会遇到很多这样的状况吗？
Okay, Director Chamber, the question is asking, number one, how long does it take to train a personnel from 0 to fully competent operate a machine? Second, during the installation, have you faced any bugs in the system, and they have to fix it during the or during the operation, there is a defect in the system. Could you give an example, or how do you face it?
Okay, so so my technicians, there's 8 of them, they have already been trained for chemo preparation in a hood. And that takes me a bit of time, okay? But to take on the robot, it's 2 days of training. That's it. And it's one-on-one training from the vendor. They don't do multiple people. It's one-on-one, and they go through the various things that the robot can do. And then they are right now in their media field testing so that they can demonstrate. And we have a documentation that, number one, they were trained. And before they get the hands-on training, they do a 3-hour Carole Link modules, of which I've done as well. So I've taken those 3 hours plus the day, and then they get another half day. So it's 2 days to do somebody who is already able to mix in a normal hood to take them over into the robot. I have not hit any defects to this point. And I had not realized, but we had their engineers come over and put the robot through its paces, and then they had to train the robot on our drugs. And I went, oh my God, I didn't realize you were going to train the dragon. I thought you were going to train my people. But no, they had to train the robots first, and now they got to the people. It took them longer to train the robot. But no, I have not hit a defect. And that's pretty good. And I think I don't even think it was a defect. It was when we were first doing the interfaces to make sure that the gobbledygook that comes across on the HL7 interface, that they were all reading the same components. I sat through those IT meetings and I went, I don't understand what you're doing, but good that you're checking, to just make sure that what was in our physician orders was coming across correctly. So that was not a defect. That was simply testing and making sure those HL7s were properly connected, because to do a proper interface in my country, it has to be HL7 compatible.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Good.
Okay. Any other question? We have 1 more minute only. Anyone? Any else? Any else? Okay. Then.
当然，我们今天知道说是 Alberta 来提供我们的便当了哈。那我想问一下，说那个 Canada 的经验，就是说各种厂牌它的污染率会不会不同哦？我们不知道这样子。
OK， 我说一下，那个便当不是只有 Alberta 哈，不是。Okay, the question is because there's still the robot, they still have the contamination on the bag, the surface of the bag and the surface of the compounding area. Have you compared different brands, their contamination rate?
No, I have not. I only have the ones from the Carole that I have. And they did all the contamination studies, again, to validate the Canadian cleaner that I needed to use, because I couldn't use those. And we got absolutely no contamination from the self-cleaning, which is what we were watching for, because I also have published with no surface contamination. So I'm pretty alert to surface contamination. I thought it was how I was going to get closed systems, but that wasn't true. Yeah. I got closed systems because they were needleless. So, yeah. And just so that you know, I don't know what you've done around workflow, but our references have said they thought in the US that a technician could do 40 to 45 preps in a shift. And they set their goal for their robot, Carole robot, to do 60, and they are getting 80 to 100 with pushing the productivity and fulfilling what the robot needs to do. So I'm pretty comfortable that I'm going to get near that 20% that you put on that graph. I'm just not going to get there fast. I'm going to do it methodically to get there so that everybody understands what we're doing. So
great.
Okay?
Okay, time is up.
Okay.
We appreciate you spend, what time right now, your time? What time?
It's 20 to 10 at night, and our
Okay.
patients start moving at
8
8
o'clock
a.m.
in the
tomorrow.
evening, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
we will
Thank you.
let you go home.
Okay, thank you.
And take a rest.
Thank you. And thank you, Arden, for your help.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah,
Okay.
appreciate all the comments and answers. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Say
Bye.
bye to you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.